because it had that V word. It had that word that you just associated with always does more good.
Not just that. I remember having a conversation, interestingly, a few months after the rollout with she's now retired, but one of my inspirations in my campaigning against too much medicine, big pharma, is the British Medical Journal, but specifically the editor of the BMJ, Fiona Godley, right? Brilliant writer, an amazing human. She had really taken the reins, I think in the world more than any editor of any journal. She was the one that said that we need to start a campaign called Too Much Medicine in 2012. And we had become friendly because I published a lot of stuff in the BMJ. And we had a catch-up chat, and it was a Zoom, and she was asking me how I'm doing. And, after she knew that I was having a lot of pressure in my career because I had, 2019, I got effectively pushed out of the NHS because there was a hatchet job on me in the Mail on Sunday, me and two other people, front page, basically saying that we are statin deniers and we are dangerous people and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. So she was aware of all the stuff, and that had initially started in the BMJ, right? So we were having a conversation, and it was quite funny. She said something along the lines of, Aseem, the BMJ have decided to support the vaccine and the rollout. But there was an element of her, she said, I kind of feel slightly uncomfortable about it because we're a campaigning journal on too much medicine. And I remember saying to her, I said, Fee, you're not against all medicine, you're against too much medicine. So I remember having that conversation with her. It's quite interesting. So I was, I completely was indoctrinated in this, that this was safe, certainly effectiveness, I think had more validity in terms of being dubious about it. And then things start to evolve over the next several months in 2021. One of my friends, who I consider one of the smartest cardiologists I know, very bright guy, he had not taken the vaccine. He had a conversation with me about it when we went for a walk, and he said that he had noticed in Pfizer's supplementary appendix there were 4 cardiac arrests in the vaccine group and 1 in the placebo. Small numbers, right, in a trial involving tens of thousands of people. But he said, if it's a real signal, we've got a problem. So I kind of acknowledged that at the time. I didn't forget that. And then my father, retired GP, vice president of the honorary vice president of the British Medical Association, very fit and active guy, during the whole of lockdown. He got chest pain, called me up in July 2021, July 26, had chest discomfort, and within half an hour had a cardiac arrest. It was witnessed by neighbors who'd come to his flat. And all very, very shocking for me, but I wanted to understand what had happened here, and had a postmortem carried out. And the postmortem findings weren't consistent with what I thought we would find. He had 2 severe narrowings in 3 of his major arteries, which was also odd because I had walked with, I'd met him quite often, and we'd walked outside up a big hill. We used to do lots of walking together when I'd meet him. He was a very active guy, and he had no symptoms of what we call angina. And normally in someone like him, with what we found in his postmortem, you would get angina pain. So that was odd. The way he had his cardiac arrest was also very odd. There was no heart attack, no damage to the heart muscle, just narrowings. But for me, instantly, I knew that something has happened to accelerate coronary artery narrowings in his heart. Something has caused these blockages to develop very, very quickly because he had very mild furring a few years earlier with good blood flow. And in fact, even since then, he'd improved his lifestyle. So this doesn't make any sense to me. And I remember, Brian, my indoctrination again was still so deep on the vaccine being safe and effective that when I tweeted out that my dad had a cardiac arrest, I was on a train to Manchester and I was looking at some of the responses, and somebody, and I don't know who it was, not someone I knew, someone had tweeted, "It's a vax." And I got really angry and blocked them immediately. And I thought, how dare you? How can you say something so ludicrous, right? A lot of people just shoot from the hip because, fine, people can say all these things and people can, I knew or whatever else. It's not about I knew or, this is coming from a place of ego. It's like, what did you know? How did you persuade others? What information did you have in a precise way? For me, that's how it's, fine, we have our intuition and that's important, right? We can say, listen, I want to wait, like my friend did, I'm not sure, and that's fine. But you don't know for sure, right? You can say, I'm skeptical. Like, can you precisely tell me the benefits and harms? That we never had that. Anyway, we move forward. And even and I haven't discussed this, I didn't mention it on Rogan, I've not discussed this actually before. I remember getting a phone call from a Times journalist in October 2021 who said to me, Dr. Malhotra, I was in Sweden at the time, I was giving a talk actually in Sweden around the links between COVID and obesity, etc. And she said, Dr. Malhotra, we've got unexplained increase in heart attacks in hospitals in Scotland, 25% increase. What do you think's going on here? And interestingly, Brian, I had predicted anyway that because of lockdowns, we were probably going to see an increase in heart attacks over the next few years, because there is other data from countries or communities that have been affected by war. Heart attacks tend to go up for several years afterwards. But that is, can we compare lockdowns with being at war? I don't know. I don't think it's that extreme, but there was definitely more stress on the population for sure. And I also know that people's diets weren't getting better. A lot of them were getting worse. So I gave this interview and I said, listen, I don't know what it is, but I can say that heart disease is multifactorial. I think poor diet may be a contributor. I think psychological stress would be. And then she asked me a question which I was a bit surprised by. She says, what do you think about could the vaccine be playing a role? And I was a bit surprised. I said, listen, any good scientist shouldn't exclude any possibility. I said, we can't exclude the vaccine, but I think it's unlikely. October 2021. Because I had no mechanism of seeing how this vaccine could do this at this point. And then the headline story, and it was all based upon my interview, right, was poor diet and stress linked to unexplained increase in heart attacks in October 2021. November 2021, I get sent an abstract from a friend of mine as a cardiologist, published in Circulation, which actually for the first time made me link back and realize I've now got a plausible explanation for how my dad died. And that was basically Stephen Gundry, who's a cardiothoracic surgeon on the East Coast of America, had been following up many patients using something called a pulse score, which is a very well-validated blood test to look at risk of heart attack over the next 5 years. And he'd shown in these middle-aged patients that within 8 weeks of the mRNA vaccines, Pfizer and Moderna, your risk of a heart attack went from 11% at 5 years to 25% just in 2 months. And fine, there are valid criticisms of no control group, et cetera, right? What happened after 8 weeks? But even if that was partially true, we've now got a mechanism of showing. And the thing is, my work prior to this was actually helping to shift the understanding of heart disease being a chronic inflammatory condition. It's not a condition that's primarily driven by high cholesterol, right? It's a chronic inflammatory condition influenced by things like high blood pressure, type 2 diabetes, and ultimately insulin resistance. So I knew that heart disease is a chronic inflammatory process. So anything that's going to cause inflammation to the coronary arteries is going to accelerate heart disease. Right. And I'm probably one of the few people that would understand that, having published, analyses on this.
Yeah. So Jim Rickards has just recorded a video that's not available to anyone in the public, and he's going to be talking about how this upcoming recession is going to be fast, it's going to be bloody, it's going to be nasty. But at the same time, he's going to show you how you can position yourself to profit from all of this chaos. Now, we've made this video only available to our viewers. Go to londonreal.tv/Jim, watch that immediately. I can't say enough good things about Jim Rickards. He understands the global economic system better than any guest I've ever had on London Real. His predictions are almost uncannily true, and you can learn how to profit from his vision, from his expertise, and his understanding of economics. So go to londonreal.tv/Jim or click the link below. It's an excellent, excellent look on what's going to happen in the future and how you can position yourself to profit from that. Jim is one of the best in the business, one of my favorite guests on London Real, and he's very, very good at predicting the future and showing us all to profit from it. So click the link, and I hope you enjoy. Hey, it's Brian Rose, founder of the DeFi Academy. I've told you my 4-week crypto bootcamp is amazing, but don't take my word for it. This is what my students are saying.
The DeFi Academy was an amazing experience for me. It took me totally out of my comfort zone.
In this course, I was challenged, I was held accountable, and pushed to do things that honestly weren't always easy.
It's been phenomenal, and I can't believe we're already up on our 4 weeks. It has flown by.
Going through this DeFi accelerator by far was one of the best courses I've taken.
You do this course, you really get into the nitty-gritty of the activities that will make you comfortable with decentralized finance.
Thank you so much to Brian and everyone at London Real and the DeFi Academy for even putting together an amazing course like this.
Anybody else that wants to do it, please sign up. It is well worth the money.